Hey, you can grab a seat. Welcome out of church. I'm going to just share a couple things that have been on my heart, but also on the heart of our church council and Marty and Mel as pastors here too. But I wanted to start by asking this question for tonight. Jimmy as well, sorry, this is a random question. Could I have the slides on the back of the TV if possible? That would be really helpful so I'm not turning back all the time. But I want to ask you this question. Like, when are we available? Because I remember as a teenager going through something really difficult. And my parents had gone through a bit of a divorce, and my youth leader, his name was Josh, was just available for me. And he was really cool, really cool. He drove a Ford Falcon. It was this metallic gray. It was turbocharged. It was manual. Oh, it was so cool. And he picked me up in it after I was having a rough day, and I really didn't want to do it. And here's the thing that I'll share the rest of the story in a second, but I don't remember any sermon as a youth kid. I don't remember any sermon Josh preached or my youth pastor preached, but what I do remember is that he was available for me. And he would pick me up in that Ford Falcon. We'd go for a drive, maybe through Nebo. I probably can't do that anymore with a youth kid, can you? But he would do that. And then we would spend time. We would play table tennis. We'd play FIFA. And he was just there for me. And he was available. And I think so many times in our life, we can often push aside availability, or we're busy, we've got lots of different things going on, and I understand that. I actually love that do not disturb setting on our phones. Call me like, I am a millennial, but I associate with Gen Z, but I only just found it in the last couple of years. And so when I walk into church, there is a focus mode on my phone called work, and so it blocks all social media, all that sort of stuff. And so I can be available for work and what that is. Well, I end up turning it off anyway, because I end up either having to reply to people on Instagram or Facebook. And anyway, but I think when I look at the availability in the world, we are often trying to push things aside, or we don't want to get too busy, and so we kind of hinder, and we don't always say yes to that. And what I want to look into tonight is a story from the Bible. But before we do that, I kind of want to give you, I think, a bit of an encouragement, to be honest. Is because as a church, and even Australia-wide actually, we have seen volunteering actually in decline. It's this pandemic, this post-pandemic drop is what they've called it. So churchgoers in a community would usually be serving at 45, 50% of their volunteers, but we've seen a drop in that across Australia, down to 35%. And they've done a bunch of studies. McCrindle's done some research on it. They call this the undercurrent of faith. There's a couple of things. I won't share all of them. But here's the summary of all that data behind me on the screen. But what it is really here is people are turning towards different things. They're making themselves available for a bunch of different things. And they're potentially turning to the church. Not everyone, but some people are turning to the church for an answer. And I can attest to this, I've seen this in our church, that we, I think, are actually bucking the trend of people not volunteering. We have seen some incredible things. I've just shared that, 24 people getting baptized. James Stone has actually joined our staff team. There's been some incredible things. Our kids ministry, oh yeah, he gets one clap. He is clap. It is great to have James. It is good to have James on board. And he got the TV working, everyone, too, off the back. He did that, which is great. We've seen Sinead lead our worship team. I've had some incredible moments with that. Is Sinead here? Sinead was here. Yeah, she's up the back there. So there's been some real great joy in this church. Even Jackson, we had this the other week, led our movement in worship. Just this Tuesday, just gone. Across all people in Queensland. I was watching him from home because I was sick, but it was like one of the greatest joys, Jackson, to see you worshiping in front of a movement of people and bringing them into the presence of God and doing that humbly. We've seen some growth in our young adults. We've got some leaders doing Project 11. I think 20 young adults serve down at Red Frogs. We saw another, was it 19 leaders, I think, serve at Smash Camp? Someone can maybe correct me on that. One clap, great, good Essie, that's good. But we've seen some cool things. We've also given out 100 Bibles as a church, which has been, we can't always clap everything. And so there's been countless hours of volunteering time, of money invested, of things sown, and I'm not here to just say we're doing incredible things, but there is still brokenness and pain and hurt in our world. And I don't know what your story is, and maybe you've walked into tonight and you're feeling like tired, or you're struggling with anxiety, or there's just things in your life that are not going the way you had expected. And you're like, this is great, Henry, that you're sharing all these things, but I don't even know if God feels available to me. And I don't know how I make space in my life. I'm busy, I've got uni, I've got school, I've got all these things going on. How do I make time for this? And across that, we also see the pain and brokenness of our world. I think it's not too far to say that we've seen some pretty heavy things. And, despite what's going on and the heaviness of that, God looks at the pain and the hurt, and he actually grieves too. There was a verse in Genesis chapter 6. It'll come up on the screen here. It said, the Lord had regretted that he had made human beings, and his heart was deeply troubled. So God's first response to our brokenness and mess and pain was not anger. It was not smiting people. His first response was grief. And his heart was deeply troubled. And so I wanted to introduce, that's funny, that's an interesting transition, Henry. I wanted to introduce you guys to this guy named Noah. And we're going to look at a story. We don't have time to go all through what his story is. We're going to look at a couple of key things about Noah. But I wanted to give you just a LinkedIn profile of what Noah's life might have been. So here is Noah. He's an ark builder, a faith-driven project manager, animal logistics specialist, disaster preparedness pioneer, and he has done some incredible things. He's a righteous man who walked with God, and you can see the quote there from God, Noah did everything just as I commanded him. So Noah's done great things, okay? Top skills, faith under pressure, you probably can't see all of that, crisis leadership, and weather forecasting, okay? Experience, I will read this because it's good. Experienced builder, leader, obedience specialist with over 100 years of hands-on experience in delivering large-scale infrastructure projects under challenging conditions. Known for his successful managing a world-changing flood resilience initiative despite widespread public criticism, limited stakeholder buy-in, and zero precedent. Passionate about faith and family preserving biodiversity through initiative transportation solutions. Built the ark before it started raining. That is Noah. Yeah, thank you. I actually wrote that too. I didn't use AI. Here's the overview, okay, of Noah's life. God saw the world, and his heart was deeply troubled, and he saw a man who was righteous. And he called him out and he said, Noah, I have a plan for you. And you're going to build an ark. And he called him to go and build. And Noah was available to that calling. And he built this ark. God gave him a bunch of instructions. He built this ark, and then floodwaters came, and he filled this, before the floodwaters came, he filled this ark with animals. His family was saved. And then the floodwaters came. People on the earth were destroyed, and Noah was this rescue vessel that was above the waters. And then eventually the floodwaters recede. The gate of that ark was opened, and humanity was restarted, and they were called to multiply, and there was provision and freedom. And that's the story of Noah. And you can read that in your Bibles. You can start in Genesis chapter 6. But today we're just going to look at a couple of key points, okay? Two things that I think will tie in, to our vision, and that I believe God's leading us in. It's two things. Noah walked with God, and he worked with God. He walked with God, and he worked with God. So it says this, Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. And this is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. And so here we see In a world full of pain and brokenness and that was drowning in their own sin, there was one man who stood up and was righteous, and God called him out as someone who had walked with him, as someone who had spent time with him. And I often think about our walks with God, and I think, okay, well, could I have been like Noah in that time? How much am I making myself available to spend time with God? Am I carving out time to pray, to seek Him, to open up His Word? And the incredible thing I think about Noah's story that ties in beautifully with us as a church is it's not about us trying to be perfect or trying to have everything all together, but it is about proximity to God. And Noah was this man who was faithful, who was righteous, who was blameless. And I wanted to just share briefly a story, actually a testimony from someone sitting in the audience today, Iris, who I think walked out this story and experienced the presence of God as she walked with him. This is from Iris's testimony. I feel like, I don't know if you maybe can relate to some of these words. I'm just going to read straight. There's a couple of things from here. I feel like I've had to prove myself. Like nothing I did was ever enough. I was trying to control everything in my life, but the more I tried, the heavier the weight on my shoulders became. I was anxious, I was restless, I didn't know how to find peace. And looking back, I realized even then I was longing for Jesus. But at the time I didn't know it, and this was my normal. Coming to Jesus made me realize that everything I went through had a purpose and was shaping me for this very moment. My faith was made stronger in his presence. Even the struggles, the anxious nights, the pressure I put on myself were part of God's plan. And I know now that I have someone beside me who will never leave me. Someone I can fully trust, who guides me with love and wisdom, and I know that I will never walk alone. Isn't that the incredible thing, that we have a God who sees us in our pain and hurt and will promise to walk alongside us in that? And so, yeah, sometimes we can think, okay, I've got to make myself available, but know tonight that God is available to you, and he wants you to walk in close proximity with him. He will do that. And you see, Noah was chosen by God. And I wonder what God might be calling you to tonight. There's this guy, Mark Sayers, who does a lot of social commentary. And he has a lot to say in the leadership space. And so this is particularly at leaders, but I think it's helpful for all of us in this quote. It kind of fits into Noah's life, but I think it fits for us too. It says, leaders do not choose, rather they respond to God choosing them. And thus the first responsive step of leadership is of utmost importance. Actually, it should come up behind me. This step as we follow God is to relinquish a life of many options so that you can receive God's one option for your life. And so the way we do that is we walk with God, just as Noah did. And what happens as we walk with God, as we spend time with him, as we're humble, as we're available to him, as we hold to integrity, he will then call us to different things, and he'll call all of us to different things, I'm sure. But then we will often be called to work. And so God works through available people, and we see that again in Noah's life. We see that Noah did all that God had commanded. There's a lot of text behind me right now. And you don't have to read it all, but I do want you to read the bottom line there. God gives a bunch of instructions to Noah. He instructs in different ways, and then he finishes with those beautiful words, Noah did everything just as God commanded him. And it opened up an incredible blessing in Noah's life. It opened a way for his family to be rescued. He's even mentioned later in the Bible in the hall of faith. You can see the verses come up there in Hebrews chapter 11. It says, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and an assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for." And so it's looking back at Noah's life saying he had hope in the restoration that God would bring. And by faith, Noah was warned about these things not yet seen, and in holy fear built an ark to save his family. And so as Noah worked in what God had called him to do, and I don't know what that is or looks like for you tonight, but as we work and as we do that, we can be part of God's rescue mission for our community, for God's people here. Now, I wanted to share a quick story just before we kind of come towards some of the visions and the things we're kind of seeing God do. I want to remind you that God works through available people. And when we look at the principles of Noah's life, we know that he walked closely with God, and we know that he worked with God. And something very simple from my life that I've seen, I prayed this prayer at the start of 2024. And I said, God, would you help me be more in touch with my emotions? I never really cried. I never really was in touch with that. And I prayed that prayer to God. And at the first sermon of that year, do you know what happened? I was talking about the loss and the brokenness in our community, and I wept on stage. I don't know when you last wept for the lost or the last or the lonely, but I did that on stage. And I got off stage and I went, great, in touch with emotions, tick. And we can laugh. But 2024 turned out to be one of the roughest years of my life following that. It was a hard thing. I lost Dad on Vision Sunday, believe it or not, 2 years ago. I lost a close friend, and his name was Riley. And the beautiful thing, I actually realized that as I was sitting at home in tears after losing Dad on Vision Sunday 2 years ago, I got to see my friend Riley get baptized. It was this like death to new life situation that I had seen. It was a friend I'd journeyed with and who I saw was available. Riley was this beautiful person who was available to God's calling. Some of you probably remember him leading us in worship and just this availability to see God move. And as I prayed that prayer in 2024 and I saw my life play out, I got to the end of the year and genuinely I was lost, and I felt that I had met the end of myself, and I thought, God, I can't do it anymore. But I remembered two things. I remembered the faithful walk that I had had with Jesus, and I also remembered a calling that he had given me in my life to preach the good news, to shine the light of Jesus, that Matthew 5:16, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. And so I can stand here and say in a moment that I nearly gave up, that I nearly threw it all in and said, God, I can't do it anymore. It was a moment that I said, I'm going to say yes to being available to this call, to the lost, available to share the good news of Jesus. And so I don't know what that looks like for you tonight. I actually don't. I think that's between you and God. But I do believe that he is calling us to radical obedience, to step into what God has made available to you. We've seen some incredible things as a church, but I want to ask you, what does that look like for you in your life, to follow after God, to become available for him, to see the lost come home, to see more of these baptism stories? And as we make a calling for us as a church even, we have a wider calling. We don't just want more kids leaders, but we do want people who are available to say yes to journeying with kids, to sharing the hope of Jesus with them. We don't just want more youth leaders, but we do want people who are available to say, I will journey with the next generation and I will share Jesus with them. And so there's some really practical ways we're going after as a church. And as part of this available for more vision, we have a bunch of different ways. You've actually got a booklet even on your seats. You can kind of find a couple of them. There's two things I really want to mention because Jeff will kind of talk about these things in a second. But God's really got two things that I'm excited for. There is a real heart we have to belong as a church, to have people come in and be welcomed. And that's been a key thing for us as a church, that people have been welcomed into this place. And we, in a bunch of prayer, have been excited to launch this holiday treehouse program. And so we're welcoming kids and families. That's prep to like grade 6 are going to come in for a day, just one day, to be able to have adventure and fun and games. And so we're calling us as a church to gather, to be praying, to be investing into that and serving in a way that we can serve the community in the way that we do that. And so we're super excited to see this holiday treehouse come up. The next thing on there is our new growth. As I shared before, we have seen some incredible things as a church. We've seen baptisms, we've seen alpha courses run. But with that is a growing need as a church to be able to make disciples. The Great Commission calls that in Matthew chapter 28. He says, therefore go and make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit. And then what does he say? He says, then teach them to obey everything I have commanded you, and surely I am with you to the very end of the age. And so we're launching this incredible thing called Hub Nights on a Wednesday. And so we do a bunch of connect groups and alpha, and there's a bunch of different things. We're gathering together on a Wednesday to be able to share the good news with people. So we're not asking you to give up your Wednesday nights for the whole year. We're just asking you to pray and be available to maybe come and serve for a term. Maybe serve with your connect group, grab a couple of friends and say, hey, I'm keen to disciple the next generation. I'm here to disciple other people. I'm here to say yes to being available for what God has for that. The other thing I'm excited to mention too, in the booklet, there's a bunch more details too, but we as a church have seen, we believe that God has gifted us everything. And as provision in that, we also love to be able to give. And so there's more time for you to be able to read all these, but these are just some of the missions and ministries we give to in our local community, in wider overseas as well. I'd encourage you to be able to read all of that. And we also are calling for more staff and leadership in that space. We would love to be able to call a youth worker to come on staff. We'd love a communications officer in that. All part of being able to share the good news of Jesus. And so we're asking for people to be praying into that and seeking God in all that he has for us. And so as we draw to a close tonight in the vision message, before I invite Jeff up to share around our budget, I want to share this. Vision is always practical. It becomes practical. Noah didn't just agree with God in theory. He built something. He had to physically go and build that ark. And it took, I think Marty shared this morning, about 75 years, is that right, to build that ark? That is a long time to be building. But in the same way, our vision, we believe, requires prayer, people, and God's provision. And so Jeff's going to help us understand how we steward that tonight. And so I want to welcome him up. And I also want to say, as a chance, yeah, you can come up, Jeff, that'd be great. As a chance to say thank you to Jeff and the church council. I don't often get to do this in front of us, but we have an incredible group of people. Jeff is a part of that. Marty sits on the church council with Mel, and there is 6 other people there that pray, that serve, that have also been hearing the exciting stories of all that's happening here at our PM service. So I just want to say thank you to you, Jeff, to Marty, to Mel, to Dean, who's here. Is anyone else from the church council here? Can I get it to stand up? I wasn't going to plan on doing that, but could I get you guys to stand up? If you're on the church council, yeah. That's good. Yeah. So Mel and Dean, Jeff, these guys spend time praying. They serve you guys. They have their board meetings and they make decisions for us as a church. And I am just so thankful for the way that these guys serve and invest in that. So thank you to you guys in all you do. But yes, over to you, Jeff, who's going to share with us.